The concrete of gigantic construction is cracking, barely keeping thousands of tons of water under control. That's when a tiny quake shakes the ground. It becomes a game changer. The old dam gives up. An enormous amount of water dashes through the rapidly growing ruptures, pressing on the crumbling wall of stone. Another moment, and the huge dam disappears among powerful waterfalls rushing toward the village down in the valley. When a large dam hits 50 years old, it reaches its alert age. But it's basically a warning that maintaining the dam is going to get much harder, and the risk factor starts going up. A recent study by the UN Institute for Water, Environment and Health discovered that the UK and Japan have the most dams in this alert age category. No wonder. In both countries, the average dam is over 100 years old. If you, like me, are wondering why so many dams are getting old at the same time, the answer is pretty simple. Back in the middle of the 20th century, there was a massive dam building boom. In the late 1950s through the 1970s, countries built over 1,100 dams every year. But after 1990, the construction frenzy slowed down. No more than 500 new dams appeared every year, and since 2000, this number has dropped even more, to below 300. But the huge problem is that many of the dams built during that mid-century boom are all aging at the same time, and a lot of countries are facing infrastructure problems at the moment. Because what happens when these dams get too old? If they're not maintained, they're likely to start to fail, and that's a real disaster, both for water supplies and safety. It's like a ginormous water-based game of Jenga. And like in the real thing, we need to make sure those pieces don't fall. A disaster like the one we're talking about happened to the Banqiao Dam built in 1952. This structure collapsed in 1975 after catastrophic rains from Typhoon Nina, leading to the loss of up to 240,000 lives. One of the reasons was the dam's poor design. It wasn't built to withstand extreme conditions. So, when the region faced unprecedented downpours, the dam overflowed and collapsed. I bet you're now super eager to know whether that dam near your home is going to fail. Well, if you find it on our list of the world's most dangerous dams, maybe it's time to relocate. The Hoover Dam is one of the highest dams in the USA, standing on the Colorado River at the border between Nevada and Arizona. Towering at over 726 feet, it's a stunning sight, as well as a powerhouse of energy. Its base is as thick as 2 soccer fields are long, and each spillway can handle the volume of water that flows over Niagara Falls. But experts warn that if the gigantic Hoover Dam breaks down, it'll most likely lead to catastrophic consequences, putting millions of lives at risk. The problem is, the dam is getting old. Plus, it's located in a seismically active area. The Almendra Dam is the highest dam in Spain. It was constructed between 1963 and 1970, and its main purpose is to control the flow of the river Tormes. This dam is no joke. Just a small manipulation could unleash a wave of destruction, so it's actually a serious concern for those living downstream. The Jinping Dam, often referred to as the Jinping First Cascade, is the tallest dam in the world. Its height is 1,001 feet. You'll find it in China. It was constructed to regulate the flow of the Yelong River. This structure carries immense responsibility, producing between 16 and 18 billion kilowatt hours annually. The average U.S. household consumes about 11,000 kilowatt hours per year. It means that the energy produced by the Jinping hydropower station is enough to supply around 1.6 million households. The Kariba Dam is a colossal structure built on the Zambezi River between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Multiple authorities carry out its maintenance, but according to reports, if repairs are not conducted as soon as possible, the dam could lead to terrible destruction in the surrounding regions. It's crucial to keep an eye on this giant. The Mosul Dam is one of the most dangerous dams in the world. It's constructed of loose mud instead of concrete. This design mishap has led to ongoing erosion. The mud gets washed away by the river slowly and steadily. People work around the clock to repair and maintain the dam, but it's still a crucial site of concern. The Idukki Dam, located in Kerala, India, is a magnificent double-curvature arch dam standing on the Periyar River. It's one of the highest arch dams in Asia, and it holds a huge volume of water. If a problem occurs at this dam, the consequences will be tragic for large areas. Such a disaster is likely to wipe out countless lives. So, the upkeep of the dam is crucial for everyone's safety. The Three Gorges Dam in China is one of the largest dams in the world and the world's biggest hydroelectric power station, completed in 2012. The dam is nearly 600 feet tall and stretches for 7,660 feet. That's more than half the width of Manhattan. The construction is so huge and powerful that experts say it's even had serious impacts on Earth itself. For example, affecting the rotation of our planet. However great it is, this dam poses a serious risk to the environment and safety. For one thing, it was built in an earthquake-prone area. Yikes. Plus, sediment buildup in the reservoir might make the construction less stable. Also, when they were building this dam, they had to relocate over 1 million people and significantly change the ecosystem. Famous for its beauty, the Monticello Dam in the USA attracts thousands of visitors each year. One of the reasons people are so eager to come there is its captivating glory hole. Indeed, at first sight, it may look like a picturesque feature. But in reality, this glory hole is actually a doorway to danger. It's basically a giant concrete funnel sticking up out of the dam. When the lake's surface level rises over 440 feet above sea level, which is close to overflowing the dam, the water starts draining out through the funnel as if from a bathtub. It creates a hypnotizing swirl, but you wouldn't want to get too close and get lost in the process. Nestled on the Columbia River in Washington, the Grand Coulee Dam has been powering the Pacific Northwest since 1942. It contains nearly 12 million cubic yards of concrete, which is enough to build a sidewalk 4 feet wide and 4 inches thick and wrap it twice around the equator. But this magnificent structure has some worries too. It's an aging structure, and at over 80 years old, it needs lots of TLC. It's located in a seismically active zone, which brings its stability into question. The Kurobe Dam in Japan is a stunning 610 feet tall. It was finished in 1963, so the structure is already pretty old. Japan's earthquakes makes this dam a bit nervous too. And last but not least, the area is prone to heavy rainfall. Intense rain might put extra pressure on the structure. On the Indus River, the Tarbela Dam is the largest earth-filled dam in the world. It was completed in 1976. Its issues include sediment buildup, which reduces its storage capacity. Plus, climate change has altered water flow, threatening the stability of the dam. The main reason we build dams is for irrigation. They help get water to our crops, and a whopping 40% of the food we eat around the globe depends on these big water-holding structures. Next on the list is hydropower. Dams are like giant batteries, turning flowing water into electricity. Then we have water supply, flood control, and even such fun activities as boating and fishing. But since dams are getting older, something needs to be done to protect people living close to them. The US is leading the way in something called dam removal, having taken down more than 1,200 dams in the last 30 years. Old dams are not only risky, but also expensive to maintain, so taking them down is often the smartest and cheapest move.
Hey, can you lift a truck with your hands? No? Shocker. But let me introduce you to nature's original strongman, the ocean, which casually tossed 700-ton boulders around like they were pebbles during a mega tsunami that hit Africa thousands of years ago. This wasn't just a bad day at the beach. This mega tsunami was so powerful, it made the 2004 Indonesian and 2011 Japanese tsunamis look like kiddie pool splashes. Now, to give you an idea of how terrifying regular tsunamis already are, The Japan tsunami produced waves 133 feet tall. The Indian Ocean tsunami was slightly smaller, but it took over 200,000 lives across many countries. Now imagine something way worse. You see, for a long time, scientists thought waves that big were just science fiction. But then they found these enormous boulders, massive chunks of rock, flung far inland, and did the math. It turns out only waves around 800 feet tall could have pulled off that kind of rocky vandalism. And the culprit? A volcano that literally fell apart into the ocean and triggered one of the most powerful tsunamis Earth has ever seen. Usually, tsunamis are blamed on underwater earthquakes, tectonic plates getting into slap fights. But volcanoes? Oh, they've got tsunami potential too. In 1883, for example, a volcano in Indonesia named Krakatoa erupted for 6 months non-stop until it exploded, and the explosion was heard all the way in Australia. This triggered many tsunamis, some almost 100 feet tall. Still, that was more like a toe dip compared to the full cannonball from the mega tsunami. Back in ancient times, the volcano that crumbled during the mega tsunami was huge, and it didn't just fall apart. It lost a chunk that was 10 times the size of Mount Everest. 10 Mount Everests. It was like the Earth wanted to see what would happen if we threw a mountain into the ocean just for fun. It was so massive that when the entire side of the volcano belly flopped into the Atlantic, it created waves that could cover the Statue of Liberty 3 times. It also destroyed an island more than 30 miles away. The volcano behind this real-life Michael Bay scene was called Fogo, located on, you guessed it, Fogo Island. This island is basically just a whole single volcano that rose from the sea thanks to a magma hotspot, a place in the ocean where a lot of magma escapes and erupts like an underwater volcano. Over time, this magma cooled and stacked up like pancakes until, voila, after 7 major eruptions, the island popped out of the ocean like it was playing peekaboo. Surprise, it's a volcano. But Fogo's dramatic entrance was also a ticking time bomb. You see, the more a volcano grows, the heavier it gets, and if there's not enough magma inside it to support it, the whole thing can just collapse. Sometimes it doesn't take much. A minor earthquake, some erosion, or just a poor foundation made of soft sediment can trigger a collapse. It's like a really tall guy trying to balance over a bunch of marbles. Fogo had all the bad luck ingredients: too tall, too heavy, and built on squishy ground. And it gets worse. As the volcano grows heavier, it starts squishing the magma underneath. That lava can't rise, so it just simmers down there, slowly thickening like soup left on a burner for too long. Gases build up, pressure increases, and eventually, kaboom! It's the volcanic version of eating too many burritos and then trying to hold in a sneeze. This massive pressure and imbalance can trigger what's called a flank collapse, which is science speak for oops, half the volcano just fell into the ocean. That's what happened with Fogo. Most of the volcanic islands that form this way are long gone, but Fogo is still very much alive and kicking. In fact, it last erupted in 2014, and considering that it goes off every 20 years, maybe don't travel to Fogo Island in around 2034. For the longest time, scientists believe only big, bulky volcanic islands could collapse like this. But new research says that even smaller, skinnier guys, like the Danny DeVitos of the island world, aren't safe either. The thing is that small volcanic islands only seem stable because of their small mass. It's like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger both slipping on the ice. Arnie's fall might cause more chaos, but Danny can still go flying. And those little collapses? Yes, they matter. Take Santa Maria, a tiny island that's about 170 times smaller than Hawaii. It has collapsed multiple times, not because it wanted to, but because it's basically standing on soggy breadcrumbs. Its foundation is loose marine sediment, and to make things worse, it's sitting right next to the East Azores Fault, where 3 tectonic plates meet up for daily slap fights. This fault is responsible for many earthquakes and even some tsunamis that happened in Lisbon in the past, so you can imagine what it's like living right above it. Every time the volcano in Santa Maria erupts and grows, it also sinks. But when a chunk collapses, it bounces back up like a buoy. This seamount to island again roller coaster means that Santa Maria has popped in and out of the ocean like a submarine playing peekaboo, and with every peak comes a potential tsunami. Another volcano with similar trust issues is Papua, located in Guatemala. Between 2011 and 2013, scientists spotted strange movements in the soil, tiny shifts that suggested something underneath was getting restless. Sure enough, in 2014, Papua erupted. Luckily, it didn't collapse, but that risk still looms, especially if magma gets trapped in it like it did with Fogo. The consequences could be explosive, literally. In fact, about 1,000 years ago, Papua experienced a collapse that sent debris avalanches more than 15 miles away. Since then, it's rebuilt itself like a fiery phoenix, but it could still crumble again. That's why volcanologists obsess over the tiniest wobbles. It's not paranoia if the mountain really might fall. Now you might be thinking here, okay, but that was the past. Surely that kind of ridiculous mega tsunami collapse can't happen again, right? Well, welcome to the 21st century. Islands like Hawaii, La Palma in Spain, and various parts of the Caribbean are sitting on the same kind of geological whoopee cushions. All it takes is the right combo: loose foundation, steep slopes, maybe some trapped magma, and boom, flank collapse. In fact, it's already happened recently. In 2018, Anak Krakatau, the volcanic baby of the infamous Krakatoa, lost a big chunk of itself during an eruption. It caused a tsunami, but it was more awkward than devastating, like a volcano losing its pants on stage. Embarrassing, but survivable. But that's just amateur hour compared to history's real showstoppers. Ritter Island's 1888 collapse was so intense that the island literally got shorter. It went from being more than 2,000 feet tall to a mere 460 feet. But the record holder is the legendary Latua Bay megasplash from 1958, where a 7.8 magnitude earthquake triggered a massive landslide that sent a wave taller than the Empire State Building roaring through Alaska at highway speeds. Strangely enough, only 5 people lost their lives here, but on the other hand, the destruction path it left behind can still be seen today, all the way from space. Melting glaciers and ice caps can make volcanoes collapse too. When they melt, there's a sudden decrease in pressure on Earth's crust that can destabilize entire volcanoes. It's called isostatic rebound. It's like suddenly yanking a chair out from under someone who's been sitting still for centuries. Whoops. Also, here's something you probably never thought you'd worry about on your island getaway. Some volcanic islands grow outward as lava pours into the sea, creating unstable platforms known as lava deltas. These deltas can collapse without warning, taking newly formed land, and sometimes tourists too, right back into the ocean. No pressure though, just thought, maybe you want to stay off steaming new land. So yeah, next time you're lounging on a beachy volcanic island thinking, wow, this place is paradise, just remember, it might also be a ticking geological time bomb with a flair for the dramatic. From ancient mountain-sized cannonballs to surprise lava deltas, volcanoes have a history of keeping things spicy. July 17, 1998. It started like a usual quiet evening in the villages along the north coast of Papua New Guinea. Then, at 5:49 p.m., the ground shook violently. Suddenly, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck. It sent shockwaves through the region. Walls cracked, homes trembled, and the earth beneath the villagers' feet shifted and twisted. It lasted for 19 seconds, with a depth of 19 miles, and seemed like a typical earthquake. And while it caused some damage, this wasn't the kind of destruction that screamed doom. So, people were tricked. They thought it was over. They didn't know that the worst was still coming. Then some villagers noticed mysterious lights. It began with a flash of red light along the horizon, a streak that looked like fire. It appeared shortly after the initial earthquake, stretching across the northern sky above the ocean. It flared brilliantly, then vanished in an instant. What could it have been? People started speculating whether it's a warning about something or just sunlight reflecting strangely. But just as it disappeared, it was followed by a loud booming sound from the sea. No one knew what that meant, and some villagers went to the beach, curious to scan the views. What they noticed there chilled them to their core. The ocean looked wrong. The water wasn't calm. It churned, bubbled, and boiled in an eerie, unnatural way. That's when they saw it. A massive wave building in the distance, rushing toward them with terrifying speed. Panic spread like wildfire. People climbed trees, pushed boats into the lagoon, hoping to escape the approaching monster. Unfortunately, it was too late. The first wave hit with unimaginable force and swept away entire villages in an instant. The debris was scattered around, trees were uprooted, buildings were displaced up to 160 to 200 feet inland. Even decades later, some of these affected villages can't be accessed by roads. At the same time, another strange phenomenon emerged. Many people described a red glow at the crest of the tsunami, as though the wave carried fire in its peak. They described an eerie glow as the wave approached the shoreline, a deep and unearthly hue, visible even from far-off places like Itape. And this was only the beginning. 2 more waves followed in quick succession. The second one was the most horrifying, from 33 to almost 50 feet high. By the time the ocean finally receded, the coastline was unrecognizable. After the waves had ravaged everything, leaving villages in ruins, the sky put on one final display. Survivors described a yellow or yellow-red glow illuminating the sky over the ocean. One man who survived by climbing up a tree saw the glow lingering over the horizon, stretching toward the direction of Arap and Itape. At Malol, the Sisters of the Mission looked out to the sea and were stunned by the surreal calm of the golden water. It was still as glass and lit by this unearthly glow. The glow was so vivid, it lit up the entire devastated landscape. Luckily, this allowed survivors to begin searching for their missing loved ones. A lot of people believe these lights were supernatural, an omen of sorts. This event ended up being catastrophic, sudden, and unpredictable. The Royal Australian Air Force responded immediately, sending in planes with relief supplies. People started an investigation. What exactly caused this disaster? Turns out, this tsunami wasn't like most others. Tsunami waves are very different from regular ones. We usually imagine huge breaking waves next to the beach. But they might first look like the water is rushing away from the shore. Stay vigilant because this is a warning sign. The water will come back very quickly and rise like a massive tide, often with devastating force. Rarely they come alone. They often arrive in a series, destroying everything along the coastline. They happen when a large amount of water in the ocean or big lake gets suddenly pushed out of place. The main causes are usually earthquakes, which happen when the Earth's tectonic plates shift suddenly under the ocean. They start lifting or lowering the seafloor, and this pushes the water above it, causing huge waves. This tsunami in Papua New Guinea was completely different though. At first, scientists thought that it was caused by the Australian and Pacific tectonic plates slipping against each other. But it turned out that the earthquake itself wasn't the problem. It really was pretty small. However, it had triggered a massive underwater landslide. When the seabed shifted, it pushed away an insane volume of water. The waves reached almost 50 feet high, like a 4-story building. That's how we realized that even small earthquakes can actually cause massive tsunamis via underwater landslides. What's even worse is that tsunamis like this can happen with little or no warning, simply because the earthquake alarms don't go off. But what about that bubbling and boiling of water that people saw? Turns out, this was the release of underwater gases. Beneath the ocean floor, there are pockets of gas trapped in the sediments. For example, methane, which is often found in oil and gas fields, or hydrogen sulfide, a gas that smells like rotten eggs. During the earthquake, the seabed probably cracked or shifted, releasing these gases into the water. This caused bubbling or boiling. The water might have heated in some areas. People mentioned that the waves felt hot and even stung their skin. The chemicals in it most likely made things even worse, irritating their skin. These gas eruptions might also have played a role in making the tsunami stronger. Maybe they were the ones that loosened the sediments that caused the underwater landslide, or pushed the water up when the gas escaped. It's like shaking up a bottle of soda. If the pressure releases suddenly, it causes a huge reaction. But what about the strange lights? Well, that's more complicated. There's a phenomenon called earthquake lights. They happen all around the world, flashes, glows, or aurora-like effects. Although they're usually white, bluish, or even multicolored, sometimes these lights last seconds, sometimes up to tens of minutes, at any point in an earthquake. If we go by their description, then the first red flash could have happened because of electricity. Earth's crust is full of quartz and similar stuff that can release electricity under pressure. When the earthquake shook the ground, all that electricity traveled up into the air. Gases from before could have helped here. They could ignite or interact with charged particles in the air, making the lights even brighter. As the wave continued to churn up sand, rocks, and debris, the intense pressure and movement could have released more sparks. This could cause the fire-like lights at the wave's crest that people noticed. Finally, the yellow light could have been all these electricized gases rising into the atmosphere. Methane and other gases interacted with Earth's magnetic field and created something like aurora borealis. But these are all speculations. The most heartbreaking part of the story is that tragedy in Papua New Guinea was preventable. Scientists knew the tsunami was coming, though it arrived earlier than they expected. The first wave struck between 10 and 25 minutes after the earthquake, about 5 minutes earlier than models showed. That means that it started somewhere close to the shore. The reason no one evacuated in time was simple. Local people didn't have a tsunami warning system or even enough knowledge about tsunamis to understand that an earthquake might lead to one, or why the water was acting weird. Things like that haven't happened in Papua New Guinea in over 60 years. But this was a wake-up call. From this immense tragedy came lessons and resilience. A year after the disaster, all the surviving locals watched a documentary that explained what had happened and taught them what to do if it ever happened again. This effort saved lives because the story did happen again. A similar earthquake and tsunami struck the nearby island of Vanuatu in November 1999. But this time, the villagers were ready. They remembered what they had seen in the film. Instead of panic, they acted quickly, and luckily, hundreds of lives were saved. Now, tsunami warning systems are everywhere in developed areas. They can send alerts to people via sirens, text messages, or broadcasts as soon as a potential tsunami is detected. A tsunami hitting major cities on or near the Mediterranean Sea and in the northeastern part of the Atlantic Ocean is not a matter of if, but when. It is scary and surreal to think that places like Cannes or Barcelona could suddenly get slammed by a huge wave, but the fact is, European coastlines are in active tectonic areas. Only about 10% of all tsunamis worldwide happen in the Mediterranean, and there have been at least 290 tsunamis in this area since 1600 before Common Era. Despite the relatively low number, this phenomenon has caused numerous devastating disasters throughout Europe's history. Back in 1755, an estimated 8.5 magnitude earthquake with an epicenter southwest of Cape St. Vincent triggered a tsunami that destroyed most of Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. About 40 minutes after the earthquake, This massive wave just slammed into the harbor in downtown, racing up the Tagus River. The phenomenon was so fast that several people on horseback had to gallop to higher ground to avoid getting carried away. And this was just the beginning of a nightmare, with 2 more terrifying waves hitting Lisbon right after. A disaster like this is similar to what we see in the Pacific Ocean several times a century, but in the Atlantic, it's very rare. This type of major tsunami is expected to happen every 3 to 5 centuries, but now it could happen tomorrow. Marseille in France, Chipion in Spain, and other cities are on the list of important locations that could be flooded soon, with a roughly 100% chance of being hit by a tsunami in the next 30 years. Statistics show that the wave will probably be more than 3 feet high. I know, it doesn't sound like much, especially since when we think about tsunamis, we imagine terrifyingly tall waves, like the one that hit Lituya Bay in Alaska. In that case, the wave was over 1,700 feet tall. But we must remember that even waves only 19 inches high can be dangerous to swimmers, because it's not the height of the tsunami that matters, but also the flow and movement of the water. Not to mention the flooding, which can damage beaches, harbors, and streets. If the coastline has a small harbor and the waterfront is exceptionally low, like Cannes, this natural disaster might be much more dangerous. Tsunamis around 6 feet high can lift cars off the ground, while smaller waves can create walls of water traveling at 40 miles per hour. Plus, there are these smaller events that might not wreck everything, but still can cost a ton of money. For example, large sandbars that move around on the ocean floor, like sand dunes shifting in deserts. They can mess up pipelines or deep-sea cables for internet and communications, and that ends up costing businesses and governments millions of dollars. That's why organizations like UNESCO are worried about the possibility of a dangerous tsunami hitting Europe soon. So they're doing everything they can to prevent apocalyptic scenarios, like what happened in 2004 when an earthquake off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, caused waves over 100 feet high in coastal communities, resulting in over 200,000 lives lost. And let's not forget about 2011, when an earthquake off the coast of Tohoku, Japan, triggered a tsunami that reached about 6 miles inland and caused a major nuclear accident at a power station along the coast. Over 16,000 people lost their lives in that tragedy, and the event resulted in billions of dollars in infrastructure damage. These disasters were huge wake-up calls, and we've come a long way since 2004. We're much safer today, largely because the tsunami warning system is highly effective at quickly detecting this dangerous situation. Unlike many other natural phenomena, a tsunami can be anticipated. We may only have a few minutes to act, but if we all know what to do, many lives can be saved. And in most parts of the world, sirens are commonly used to alert people to tsunamis. To sound the siren as early as possible, initial tsunami alerts usually rely only on seismic data. First, specialists receive information about an earthquake. Seismic waves travel about 100 times faster than tsunamis, so they have enough time to analyze the data and see if the earthquake might have generated a tsunami and whether they should issue an initial tsunami alert. At U.S. warning centers, for example, scientists typically issue initial alerts within 5 minutes of an earthquake. If a tsunami is suspected, these alerts may also include information about wave arrival times, recommended actions, and potential impacts. But sounding the alarm is not enough. To save lives, coastal communities also need to be trained to respond fast and in the best way possible. That's why UNESCO produced this program called Tsunami Ready, aiming to train people living in coastal areas at risk on how to act in case of a tsunami event by the year 2030. The idea is to help communities stay safe by teaching them how to protect their livelihoods and safeguard their homes. Being recognized as Tsunami Ready by UNESCO doesn't mean a community is tsunami-proof, of course. It's more like a recognition that they have adopted all possible measures to mitigate tsunami risks. So authorities are helping communities to prepare themselves by installing evacuation signs, establishing security procedures, and creating plans to warn tourists. Like Spain, which distributed tsunami warning signs along the entire coastline, as well as signs showing evacuation routes to higher ground. And Spain better be prepared. I mean, only 7 tsunamis have hit the country since the year 365, so it's difficult to predict the effects of such an event. But they could be devastating, considering that Spanish coastal areas are so economically important. There's also a danger zone in the Averroes Fault, beneath the Boran Sea. If an earthquake happens at this point, people will have only 21 minutes to escape a tsunami. UNESCO has also established 12 tsunami warning centers, which cover Europe as well. This initiative involves 5 centers located in the Mediterranean and Northeast Atlantic regions. These centers can save thousands of lives because they monitor ocean disturbances 24/7. Then, after analyzing the threat, they send out messages based on the event's potential to cause a tsunami. The intensity scale ranges from no effect to completely devastating. And by that, they understand that nearly all brick buildings could be demolished by waves, and even the most reinforced concrete structures could suffer heavy damage. Now, so far, we have mostly talked about tsunamis caused by earthquakes along converging tectonic plate boundaries. In fact, earthquakes have accounted for over 80% of tsunamis since 1900. But tsunamis can also result from landslides, volcanic eruptions, and even meteorite impacts. Experts are also worried that with the current changes in climate, we might see more of meteotsunamis popping up in the Mediterranean. These ones are triggered by freaky weather conditions and can mess with any coastline that's got a shallow seafloor. They might not be as huge or famous as the earthquakes ones, but they can still cause significant property damage and put people in danger. For instance, in 2006, a meteotsunami struck the harbor of Ciutadella on the Spanish island of Menorca. Yachts were tossed into each other and later stranded on the harbor floor as the water receded, resulting in tens of millions of euros in damage. Unfortunately, meteotsunamis in the Mediterranean tend to be stronger during summer, so if you're planning to spend your vacation in Europe, stay alert for any signs of dangerous waves. If you suddenly encounter a tsunami moving in your direction, remember this is the time to react. Move to higher ground as far inland as possible. Pay special attention to any emergency alerts and information, and follow the guidance of local authorities. Most importantly, do not wait around taking photos. Leave the area as soon as you notice any signs of this danger event, or if you hear an official tsunami warning. Hey, stay safe.
A tsunami can travel unnoticed in the deep waters at the speed of 500 miles per hour, crossing an ocean in less than a day. When it approaches land, a tsunami will slow to about 20 miles an hour and begin to grow in height. Most of these waves are less than 10 feet high when they hit land, but they can reach more than 100 feet high, about 2 times as tall as the Hollywood sign. When a tsunami comes ashore, areas less than 25 feet above sea level and within a mile of the sea are in the greatest danger. But sometimes, tsunamis can go 10 miles inland. If you're by the coast and feel a strong earthquake, especially one that lasts for more than 20 seconds, that could be a major red flag that a tsunami is on the way. Keep an eye out for sudden changes in the sea level. If the water suddenly recedes way further back than usual, exposing normally submerged areas, that's a sign that a tsunami might be on its way. Plus, if you hear a roaring sound coming from the ocean, like a freight train or a jet engine, that's another ominous sign. And pay attention to any unusual animal behavior. Animals have been known to sense danger before humans do, so if you see birds or marine life acting strangely, it's time to take notice. If you receive an official tsunami warning from authorities, whether through sirens, radio, TV, or mobile alerts, don't ignore it. Take immediate action. If you're in a tsunami-prone zone and experience an earthquake, don't even wait for official warnings. As soon as it's safe to move after the shaking stops, head to the nearest elevated area promptly to ensure your safety. Practice evacuation routes before a real disaster. You might have to follow this route at night and in terrible weather. If you know it well, you'll need to do less thinking in an emergency, which can be life-saving. Talk about tsunamis with all your family members. Everyone should know what to do to minimize fear and win some precious time. Don't store your important papers and valuables in low-lying areas. Floodwaters can go really high during a tsunami, so put your documents in waterproof containers on higher ground. After an earthquake, bridges and roads often get damaged or become blocked. Not to get trapped in a car in a potentially hazardous location, walk or run towards safety. Never go down to the shore to watch for a tsunami. If you can see the wave, it means you're too close to outrun it. Most tsunami-prone areas have signs indicating evacuation routes. Look out for white and blue signs marked Tsunami Evacuation Route, or similar instructions to guide you inland and away from danger zones. In urgent situations where evacuation isn't possible, seek refuge on the 3rd floor or higher in a sturdy building. Even better, aim to reach the rooftop of the tallest and most robust structure nearby. It's better than being exposed. A tsunami is not a single wave, but a series of waves with massive amounts of water that can flood for hours. The first wave may not even be the largest. So, remain on high ground, away from the coast until you receive an all clear from the authorities. You're really unlikely to survive a tsunami in a basement below ground level. As it passes over, everything in its wake gets submerged temporarily until the water recedes back to the sea. If you're in a basement during a tsunami, you might get crushed by collapsing buildings or swirling debris. Unless the basement is exceptionally sturdy, waterproof, and equipped with sufficient air supply, it's not a safe option for shelter. If you happen to be out at sea when a tsunami warning is issued for your area, stay put and avoid returning to port immediately. Tsunamis can sneak up on you with rapid water level changes and dangerous currents in harbors and ports, making them unsafe. In large harbors and ports, authorities take charge during tsunami alerts and direct vessel movements for safety. It's important to stay in touch with these authorities and follow any instructions they give regarding moving your vessel. For smaller ports without such organized control, it's a better idea to carefully relocate your boat to deeper waters. If you have a small boat, the best you can do is leave your vessel at the pier and seek higher ground yourself. If a tsunami gets you in the water, find something sturdy like a tree, a door, or a life raft. Grab onto it tightly while you get carried by the waves. Try your best not to swallow any of the water. Tsunamis can pick up chemicals and waste, which won't do you any good. People in life jackets have a higher chance of survival because they will remain on the surface of tsunami waves and can breathe normally. Tsunami waves aren't like ordinary waves, so they aren't suitable for surfing. Tsunamis don't have a face to ride. They're more similar to tides as they rush in and out. They're much larger, faster, and more powerful. So, trying to surf them is not only dangerous but also illegal in many countries. Because tsunamis come from underwater disturbances, like earthquakes, they're even dangerous for submarines. Despite submarines' robust design to withstand underwater pressure, the force of tsunamis can cause damage. Tsunamis also generate strong currents that can mess up a submarine's ability to navigate effectively. In cases of severe tsunamis, submarines may get hull damage, threatening their buoyancy and integrity. Such scenarios can lead to submarines sinking or being carried away by the waves. That's why submarines operating in tsunami-prone areas must be extra careful and equipped to respond swiftly if this sea monster strikes. Scientists still can't predict tsunamis, but they can use their expertise in seismology and historical tsunami data to identify earthquakes likely to trigger tsunamis and issue warnings. They gather crucial data from seismic and water level networks worldwide, which enables them to swiftly assess earthquake characteristics such as magnitude, location, and depth. Utilizing this information, they determine whether an earthquake has the potential to generate a tsunami and decide on issuing tsunami advisories. For regions like the US and Canada, warning center scientists can typically issue preliminary messages within 5 minutes of an earthquake. These messages include alert levels, earthquake details, threat evaluations, anticipated wave arrival times, recommended actions, and potential impacts. On the 26th of December 2004, early in the morning, an enormous earthquake shook up the ocean floor near the Indonesian island of Sumatra. This seismic event unleashed a monstrous series of waves, tsunamis, that spread out across the Indian Ocean, reaching as far as East Africa over the next 7 hours. These waves were towering walls of water, some reaching a height of over 30 feet. When they slammed into the coastlines of countries like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Maldives, and Thailand, the devastation was catastrophic. Over 200,000 people lost their lives in this most devastating tsunami on record. And it wasn't just the immediate impact. Long-term consequences hit hard too. Villages, resorts, farmlands, and fishing areas were destroyed or submerged in salt water along with debris. Japan is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world because it's located on top of 4 converging tectonic plates that constantly interact with each other. After a terrible tsunami in 2011, the country started a colossal project dubbed the Great Wall of Japan. With a jaw-dropping price tag of around $13 billion, this wall goes from the north to the south of the country. The goal is to safeguard coastal towns from future tsunamis, buying its people precious time to save themselves. Some locals worry that this towering structure will sever their deep-rooted ties with the sea. They fear losing touch with the ocean's rhythms and cues, which are crucial for spotting upcoming disasters. But for many coastal towns, the wall is a lifeline, giving them hope for rebuilding shattered lives post-disaster.
An underwater earthquake opens a huge gap in the ocean floor. A large volume of water moves to fill the crack. At the same time, waves start to spread out from that point. They're just a foot high at first, but the closer they get to shore, the larger they become. When the waves reach shallow waters, they start to slow down. Their lower parts get to dry land first. This creates a vacuum effect that pulls the water away from the coast. The harbor and seafloor are visible now. And then, an enormous wall of water hits the shore. It wipes out everything in its path. Several minutes later, more waves usually arrive. Or it can be a landslide happening near a large body of water. Enormous amounts of forest, soil, and rock roll down into a lake or ocean, producing huge tsunami waves. Volcanic eruptions are responsible for 5% of the world's tsunamis. They can move great volumes of water and generate really big waves. Some tsunamis are caused by meteorites striking into our planet. If one of these red-hot space visitors strikes the ocean, the force of this collision displaces enough water to produce an extremely powerful tsunami. When a tsunami starts, its waves are usually just 1 foot high. That's what a small wave looks like. It comes up to the waist of the average person. Surfers call such rather big waves double overhead. The largest earthquake ever recorded happened near the coast of southern Chile. It triggered a tsunami that reached Hawaii, Japan, and the Philippines. The tsunami's largest wave was as tall as a 5-story building. The largest wave ever surfed was half as tall as the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Garrett McNamara set this record in 2011 in Nazaré, Portugal. In 1995, scientists proved the existence of rogue waves, sudden unexpected swells. On that day, they saw an 84-foot wave. It was taller than the world's largest passenger plane Airbus A380. The giant was surrounded by smaller 20-foot waves. Tohoku tsunami waves in 2011 were generated by the strongest earthquake in Japan's recorded history. The highest wave was almost half as tall as the Brooklyn Bridge. Krakatoa's volcanic eruption in 1883 produced the loudest sound ever heard on the surface of the planet. The highest tsunami wave the eruption formed was as tall as the Statue of Liberty. April Fool's Day tsunami in 1946 was triggered by a powerful earthquake near Alaska. The tsunami's highest wave was a bit taller than the Colosseum in Rome. The Boxing Day tsunami started in the Indian Ocean in 2004. It was caused by a powerful undersea earthquake. Its tremors produced a series of tsunami waves. The largest of them almost reached the height of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. One of the most disastrous landslides hit Lodeland Valley in Norway in 1936. An enormous piece of rock, almost twice as large as the Eiffel Tower, broke loose and hurtled into Lofoten Lake. This caused an enormous tsunami wave. It was almost as tall as the Taj Mahal in India. 2017 Greenland mega tsunami was triggered by a massive landslide at one of the fjords. The waves that flooded the shore reached the height of Big Ben. A powerful volcanic eruption caused a landslide from a 4,000-year-old lava dome. This set off Unzen volcano mega tsunami. The largest wave was half as tall as the Space Needle in Seattle. Fogo mega tsunami happened 73,000 years ago, when a part of the Fogo volcano collapsed into the sea. The mega tsunami's largest wave was as tall as the Washington Monument. When the upper 1,500 feet of Mount St. Helens exploded, it caused a massive landslide. A part of this avalanche plunged down into Spirit Lake. This caused a wave that was more than half the height of the Eiffel Tower. The Banqiao Dam mega tsunami happened when a landslide dragged 9 billion cubic feet of forest, soil, and rock into the lake. A colossal wave overtopped the edge of the dam, taking out everything in its path. Its height was greater than that of the Golden Gate Bridge. A landslide in Lituya Bay in Alaska formed a megawave, one of the largest ever recorded. The mega tsunami surged over the headland, washing away trees, plants, and soil down to bedrock. The wave reached more than half the height of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest construction in the world. A third of the East Molokai volcano in Hawaii caved in and collapsed into the Pacific Ocean. This created a tsunami the size of the second tallest building in the world, Shanghai Tower. Imagine a 10-story high wall of water with a foamy white peak smashing into the shore. That's the mental image we all have when we think of tsunamis. But is it accurate? And if it is, why don't daredevil surfers ride them? That's a huge wave begging to be caught. Fear of heights, top speeds, because they choose life? Don't want to smack right into a building when that thing crashes into the shore and floods through the streets? But they're supposed to be daredevils. And how cool would it be if you, with your cheeks flapping in the wind, could ride that tsunami right into your 10th floor apartment? Just don't forget to leave the window open when you head out. No, seriously, where would anyone get the idea to surf a tsunami? I know where. Movies. All those disaster flicks depicting tsunamis as monstrous waves. It's like they cut that wave from a summertime fun surfer movie, pasted it into their own, and blew the image way up. And don't forget about that blue-gray filter. There we go, our disaster tsunami blockbuster is ready. Leave it to the filmmakers to overlook the details. Realistically, the difference between tsunamis and surfing waves is as ridiculously huge as that movie wave about to take out that skyscraper. You can surf on a massive wave, as long as it's the right kind. And that surfable kind can even be bigger than tsunamis. Some surfers ride them every year, but I'll get into that a bit later. So, what is the difference between this right kind of wave and tsunamis? Well, in surfing, every wave has a face or wall. That's the sweet spot each surfer looks for to ride down from. Like going downhill on a snowboard, only you aren't strapped to the board and there's always an avalanche behind you. And there could be sharks right under your feet, waiting to clean up whatever's left of you when you wipe out. Sorry, that got a little, terrifying. Surfing's fun, but I'll watch from the beach, thanks. Tsunamis aren't like this at all. Imagine a tsunami more like a giant tide that comes in a matter of minutes. Yes, the water will likely rise 30, sometimes 60 feet higher than it usually does, but it won't do it as a wave with that much needed wall. It'll be something like a hill of water that rolls in. Think of it like a giant gloopy lava traveling over the shore, only faster. No, even faster. Wait, that's even more terrifying than the shark thing. Never mind. For a normal surfable wave to appear, all you need is the wind to blow. Tsunamis, however, are born by some relatively rare events like earthquakes and underwater volcano eruptions. This is also where the difference in force is coming from. Tsunamis aren't always bigger than regular waves, but they are much more powerful. So every time they come, they tend to bring disaster with them. When an underwater earthquake happens, it produces unbelievable amounts of energy that literally punches the water. This energy has to go somewhere, and that somewhere is towards the shore in the form of a tsunami. In fact, next time you're doing the dishes and in need of some fun, you can make your own mini tsunami. Just place your hand fully underwater and move it up and down, even just a little bit. You'll see ripples on the surface. This is what happens in the ocean after an earthquake, but on a much larger scale. Tsunamis gain incredible speed from the ocean bed moving or shifting up to 200 miles per hour. So those things hit land going as fast as an arrow through the air? Well, that's why I said cheeks flapping in the wind as you ride that gnarly wave. But no, seriously, they aren't going nearly that speed when they crash onto the shore. They lose a lot of that energy as they meet the rise of the ocean floor near the coastline and any underwater obstacle in their path. When you surf into your apartment window, you'll only be going about 30 miles per hour. They might slow down, but the wave grows bigger as it gets closer to the coast. Mega tsunamis are those 100-footers that'll get you into your 10th floor flat. The average height for most is only about 10 to 30 feet. Yeah, only. Compare that to a normal surfing wave. It's usually 6 feet high and only goes about 13 miles per hour. That's why tsunamis are still fast and big enough to cause major damage. But the surfing ones are no walk in the park either. Those kinds can be dangerous too. Just like tsunamis, wind-driven waves will rise when they hit an underwater obstacle near the shore. This obstacle, be it an underwater ridge or coral reef, is the main source of danger for surfers. If a surfer can't hang, they'll be dragged into the deep where sharp reefs lie. That and hitting the water doesn't exactly feel like a gentle pat on the back for a job well done. Okay, I get it. You can't surf a tsunami. But we're in what-if territory, where the rules don't apply, and my imagination likes to run wild. So let's have some fun tackling this challenge. First things first, since the tsunami isn't a usual wave, we need to find a way to turn it into a surfing spot. Somehow get it to form a wall. One thing that could work is an artificial obstacle under the water that'll be specifically designed to strip the tsunami of its monstrous energy. Sorry, we'll lose some of that epic speed, but we need to make it rise higher. The obstacle will have to be a massive structure, but still deep enough that our surfer doesn't bog his head if he wipes out. Next, we need to take further safety measures. In this case, some sturdy gear. Typical surfing wetsuits are made of neoprene, a flexible material that can protect you only from cold water and help you stay afloat. But lucky you! A new technology recently emerged, a wetsuit that can resist a shark bite. It's like Kevlar vests in a way. All the tests show that it can't be punctured with sharp objects, and it prevents bones from breaking. Unfortunately, bruises from blunt impact are inevitable. It's tsunami surfing we're talking about after all. And finally, the board itself. If riding a normal surf wave is a fair challenge of your sense of balance, then keeping yourself on that board while riding a tsunami might just be impossible. Remember what if? Okay, let's throw some stabilizers on that bad boy. There, now you're ready. You're ready, aren't you? Don't chicken out on me now. Come on, people have done this. They do it all the time in Nazir, Portugal. Well, they don't surf tsunamis, of course, but big wave pro surfers go there every year to challenge Nazir swell. And this 30-foot tsunami you're about to ride is just a pup compared to the biggest wave ever surfed. It was 80 feet high, more than twice the height of a telephone pole. Brazilian pro surfer Rodrigo Coja broke this record in 2017. Maya Gabeira set the women's record by conquering a 68-foot wave in 2018. And I don't think that's the limit, because waves in Nazir can reach 100 feet at times. Hey, the reason why waves in Nazaire are so big lies deep underneath the ocean surface. This place has one of the largest underwater canyons in Europe. It's a 140-mile-long, 3-mile-deep gash in the seabed that pushes insane amounts of seismic energy to produce massive waves by the time they hit the shore. The canyon alone triples wave heights here, but there's also strong ocean currents and powerful swell winds in this region. So, it's like the perfect storm for surfers who like a real challenge. A 4-story wall of water that only rises once in 1,300 years was recorded off the west coast of Canada. Some people blame waves like this for disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Rogue waves can get strong enough to sink container ships and oil rigs. The Canadian water monster didn't hurt anyone, but it did become a sensation. And it looks like we're about to see even higher and more powerful rogue waves in the future. The team of Marine Labs, the company that operates the buoy that got caught in the Ucluelet wave, couldn't believe the data they saw. A huge force came out of the blue, pulled the buoy down, and then set it up to a peak before taking it even deeper. They thought it must be a rogue wave, so they sent the data to a scientist at the University of Victoria who specializes in these beauties. They analyzed the data and confirmed it was indeed not a technical mistake. The wave officially became the most extreme rogue wave ever officially recorded, as it was 3 times the height of waves around it. Scientists have reported seeing giant waves coming out of the blue for centuries, but no one really believed them. Back in 1826, a French scientist and naval officer was crossing the Indian Ocean on his ship, the Astrolabe. They got in a terrible storm and saw several waves over 98 feet tall. It's almost as tall as a 10-story building. The crew lost one of its members, but the 4 of them, including the captain, made it to land and shared what they saw. But back then, scientists were sure waves couldn't be taller than 30 feet. Everyone took their story as a tall tale. Pun intentional. Over a century later, a cargo ship, the MS München, mysteriously disappeared. People believed it to be unsinkable, just like the Titanic, so it was a real shock that all that was left of it was one lifeboat. When experts analyzed the damage, they concluded that it must have been hit by a wave that was around 65 feet high. Witnesses shared many other stories of giant waves coming out of nowhere, but scientists officially recognized the first rogue wave only in 1995. It went down in history as the Doppner wave, or the New Year's wave. This monster on the North Sea that was 84 feet tall hit the Norwegian gas platform Doppner on New Year's Day. It was twice larger than the wave surrounding it. The rig was built to withstand waves up to 64 feet tall and had the most advanced sensors for its time. The wave wasn't like any other type of wave they'd studied before. So they had to admit rogue waves were real and gave them an official definition. It's a wave more than twice as tall as others around it. It can pop up lightning fast in a stormy sea, or show up out of nowhere in calm waters. These waves have steep sides and a deep trough below, and look like a wall of water rising out of the sea. They're so intense that they can even swallow up rescue helicopters trying to do their job. In 2007, America's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration made a list of 50 historical maritime tragedies that were most likely caused by rogue waves. Some of the events on the list happen not in the open water, but in lakes. Lake Superior has something that's got the name Three Sisters. It is a series of 3 large waves, one after another. The second wave covers the ship's decks before the first one is gone. The third wave jumps in and adds extra water. These 3 sisters overload the ship. There's a theory that this phenomenon took down the freighter Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975. There are 2 main theories trying to explain how rogue waves happen. First, we've got the linear addition theory. Imagine waves cruising through the ocean at their own speeds. When these waves cross paths, they team up and become stronger to turn into a rogue wave. Then there's the nonlinear focusing theory. It says waves like to roll in groups, and when they spend time together, they exchange some energy. Sometimes, this energy exchange turns into a rogue wave. To predict the formation of these freaky waves, Scientists would need an innovative radar system to keep a constant eye on the waves near a boat. They'd collect all the data and put in a math model that would create a real-time picture of what the ocean surface looks like at that very moment. This model would need to do new calculations of the surface situation every 5 minutes. It would let the crew know if there were any extreme waves coming up in the next several minutes. Such a system doesn't exist yet, but there is a huge progress in this direction. Scientists from the University of Melbourne went on an expedition to Antarctica and found out that strong winds play a big role in the creation of rogue waves. It looks like they're caused by a mix of strong winds and the random way waves move and interact with each other. This idea was tested in labs before, but now they've proven it happens in real oceans too. To study these waves, the scientists use special 3D cameras. These cameras work like human eyes, taking lots of images in a row to create a detailed 3D picture of the ocean surface. It showed that rogue waves happen more often when waves are young, which means they're just starting to form and are more affected by the wind. When strong winds blow over young waves, they make the waves taller, longer, and faster, but not evenly. Some waves steal energy from nearby waves and grow much bigger, which is how rogue waves form. The scientists noticed these giant waves happened about once every 6 hours. They recorded no rogue waves in calmer seas, when the wind doesn't have as much influence. Scientists are concerned that rogue waves may happen more often in the future because there's more energy in the atmosphere and ocean. It looks like rogue waves can be much more powerful than scientists ever thought. They managed to create the famous Doppler wave in a lab for the first time in 2018. This helped them study these mysterious waves up close and showed that their secret is in how they form. We think of waves rolling gently on a beach, but the waves in this study happen in open water when waves from different directions meet. When waves come together from far apart directions, they push the water upward, creating what's called a partially standing wave or a cross wave. This can happen when two seas meet, or when wind directions suddenly change, like during a hurricane. The study found that the bigger the angle between the meeting waves, the taller the cross wave becomes. Normally, when a wave breaks, it forms a white foamy top, and that's where it stops growing. But if a wave is formed by water coming from many directions, it can keep growing even after breaking. These special waves can grow to be twice as steep while breaking, which is already much bigger than normal waves. And if you add up all the growth from waves coming together, they can become 4 times steeper than what anyone thought was possible. This discovery could change the way we build things, like wind turbines or oil platforms in the ocean, to make them safe. Right now, many designs don't fully account for these huge multi-directional waves. Now, they seem to have a lot of similarities, but rogue waves aren't the same as tsunamis. Tsunamis happen when there's a big shift in water, like an earthquake, volcanic eruption, or landslide. They mess with the entire water column. At sea, you might not even notice a tsunami cruising beneath you, but near the shore, as it hits shallow waters, those waves can shoot up to crazy heights. Rogue waves are formed at the surface level, although sometimes they can form deep below, and these are called rogue internal waves.